जय गोपीजनवल्लभ जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी। जय गोपीजनवल्लभ जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी। जय यशोदानंदन जय ब्रज जनरंजन जय यशोदानंदन जय ब्रज जनरंजन। जय यमुना तीरवनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय यमुना तीरवनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी। जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा। जय गुरुदेवा 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 जय गुरुदेवा। जय ओम विश्वपाद परमहंस परिव्रजकाचार्य स्तोत्रषद श्री श्रीमद डिवाइन ग्रेस एसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विश्वपाद परमहंस परिव्रजकाचार्य स्तोत्रषद श्री श्रीमद डिवाइन ग्रेस श्रील भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर महाराज की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। Hare Krishna. Reading from Canto 3, Chapter 30, Text 7. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेष्व अद्भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमा श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टकी। Canto 3, Chapter 30, Text 7. Sandehi mana sarvanga esham udvahanadhina karoti aviritam mudho दुरितानि दुराशयः Sandahimana sarvanga. Sandahimana sarvanga. Esham udvahanadhina. Esham udvahanadhina. Karoti aviratam mudho. Karoti aviratam mudho. Duritani durashayaha. Duritani durashayaha. Sandahimana sarvanga. Esham udvahanadhina. Karoti aviratam mudho. Duritani durashayaha. Sandahimana sarvanga. Esham udvahanadhina. Karoti aviratam mudho. Duritani durashayaha. Sandahimana sarvanga. Esham udvahanadhina. Karoti aviratam mudho. Duritani durashayaha. Esham udvahanadhina. Karoti aviratam mudho. Duritani durashayaha. Sandahimana sarvanga. Esham udvahanadhina. Karoti aviratam mudho. Duritani durashayaha. Vaishnavis. Sandahimana sarvanga. Esham udvahanadhina. Karoti aviratam mudho. Duritani durashayaha. Synonyms. Sandahimana, burning. Sarva, all. Angaha, his limbs. Esham, these family members. Udvahana, for maintaining. Adhina, with anxiety. Karoti, he performs. Aviratam, always. Mudha, the fool. Duritani, sinful activities. Durashaya, evil-minded. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Although he is always burning with anxiety, such a fool always performs all kinds of mischievous activities with a hope which is never to be fulfilled in order to maintain his so-called family and society. Please repeat. Although he is always burning with anxiety, such a fool always performs all kinds of mischievous activities with a hope which is never to be fulfilled in order to maintain his so-called family and society. Purport. It is said that it is easier to maintain a great empire than to maintain a small family, especially in these days when the influence of Kali Yuga is so strong that everyone is harassed and full of anxieties because of accepting the false presentation of Maya's family. The family we maintain is created by Maya. It is the perverted reflection of the family in Krishna Loka. In Krishna Loka, there are also family, friends, society, father and mother. Everything is there, but they are eternal. Here, as we change bodies, our family relationships also change. Sometimes we are in a family of human beings, sometimes in a family of demigods, sometimes a family of cats, or sometimes a family of dogs. Family, society, and friendship are flickering, and so they are called asat. It is said that as long as we are attached to this asat, temporary, non-existing society and family, we are always full of anxieties. The materialists do not know that the family, society, and friendship here in this material world are only shadows, and thus they become attached. Naturally, their hearts are always burning, but in spite of all inconvenience, they still work to maintain such false families because they have no information of the real family association with Krishna. Translation once again. Although he is always burning with anxiety, such a fool always performs all kinds of mischievous activities with a hope which is never to be fulfilled in order to maintain his so-called family and society. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak. We are continuing Lord Kapila's instructions to his mother, description of adverse fruitive activities. And here there's a lot of heavy information which is being given by Lord Kapila, particularly talking about how individuals who are unduly attached to family members, society, and different kinds of affiliations are actually classified as fools. So I went to Vedabase and I was looking at the term fool, how many times the word fool came in our scriptures, particularly in the Bhagavatam. And the key words that I found in this particular translation and purport, which I'm actually going to talk about, is the first keyword is fool, the second is anxiety, and the third is mischievous activities. And I'll tell you about 3 different stories which actually recount the foolish nature of individuals because of the extreme attachment to family members or prestige or position and so forth. So when I was preparing for this class, I was meditating when Srila Prabhupada talks about fools, what kind of fools exist. I speak for myself also here. There are different kinds of fools in the society here. Fools attached to wealth, fools attached to family members, fools attached to profession, any kind of ism like nationalism and so forth, communism. Then fools who are attached to senses, they're not able to let go of sense attachment. And finally, fools attached to their ego of power. So we'll see some examples here. And in terms of anxiety, I was thinking about myself, what was my greatest anxiety in the past week or so. And today is a big day of anxiety for a lot of people because it's tax deadline day, April 15th. So I was thinking, I was in the same position about 10 days ago or 15 days ago, and it was a lot of anxiety because we are so attached here and we are forced to do something. If we don't do it, the government comes after us and we may suffer the penalty. So that's a huge anxiety. So anxiety can come from family, from our jobs, financial anxieties, as well as social anxieties. Anxieties are going to be there for sure. We are subjected to 3 kinds of miseries, so we cannot escape these anxieties and miseries. And then in terms of activities, again, the activities can be classified as 3 different kinds. Srila Prabhupada mentions here mischievous activities, and it's very interesting. If you see the synonym, the word duritani is translated as sinful activities. So there are 3 kinds of activities: karma, vikarma, and akarma. And based on what I'm reading here, I guess what is being referred to here as mischievous and sinful activities is referring to vikarma. So karma are activities which are prescribed in the Vedas, and if we follow them, we accumulate piety. So people become pious by giving donation, charity, austerity, penance. So those are all recommended in the Vedas, and they should be done. Then vikarma are whimsical activities which should not be done, which are prohibited in the Vedas, but people still do it. And those incur sinful reactions. But we have to strive for the 3rd level of activities, which is akarma, Akarma means activities which are done for the pleasure of the Lord, which will not incur any sinful reactions. So these are the three kinds of activities. So I'm just going to give you some examples. As I mentioned, I did some research in the Veda base to see examples of people who are unduly attached to different kinds of objects. So the first example that comes to my mind is Dhritarashtra. We all know how Dhritarashtra was excessively attached to his son Duryodhana. In fact, it is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam 10.49 to 21 to 24, all the way, when Lord Krishna sent Akrur, his uncle, to Hastinapur to see how Dhritarashtra is doing, how the Pandavas are doing, and how the Kauravas are treating them. And Akrur goes to Dhritarashtra, and there Vidur and Mother Kunti, actually Mother Kunti starts crying, and she says to Akrura, "Do my parents and other relatives, headed by Krishna and Balram, ever think of me and my sons, and will Krishna ever come to console us in our distress?" So both Vidur and Kunti actually tell Akrur that Dhritarashtra has been very cruel, and his son, all his sons are mistreating them. And so Akrur actually goes to Dhritarashtra and gives him great pieces of wisdom. And we'll see what is Dhritarashtra's response. He's completely shackled by his affection for his son. And we know this affection actually led to the downfall of the entire Kaurav dynasty. And these words are very interesting here, what Akrur actually spoke, and I'm just going to quote them. "In this world, no one has any permanent relationship with anyone else, O king. We cannot stay forever, even with our own body. What to speak of our wife, children, and the rest? Every creature is born alone and dies alone, and alone one experiences the just rewards of his good and evil deeds. A fool indulges in sin to maintain his life, wealth, and children and other relatives, for he thinks, these things are mine. In the end, however, these very things all abandon him, leaving him frustrated" here. So Akrur is actually giving very nice advice to Dhritarashtra, and Dhritarashtra actually knows that this is the right advice, but the response he gives is very honest, and he says, "O Akrur, I cannot hear enough of your beneficial words, which are like sweet nectar of immortality. But because the tight knot of affection for my sons has made me biased toward them, your statements cannot become fixed within my mind." So Dhritarashtra is acknowledging that Akrur, whatever he's saying to him, is words of wisdom, but he says, "This is my weakness, I cannot help it, I'm really attached to my son." And we know what happened. All his 100 sons were vanquished, and eventually Dhritarashtra eventually after much cajoling by Vidur, he eventually did surrender to the Supreme Lord. So this undue attachment to family members actually led to the downfall of his own dynasty here. And then other examples, there's so many examples in the Bhagavatam, I've just taken a subset here, where individuals who are very much attached to little children or family members can also suffer extensively, and this is recounted in Bhagavatam 11.7.53, where the son of Yayati, Maharaj Yadu, is actually meeting an Avadhut Brahmin, and he asks him, "You're looking so happy and so blissful, you're just walking around without a worry in the world. Where are you getting all this bliss from?" And the Avadhut says, "O king, I have 24 gurus in my life." And he mentioned, I'm just going to talk about 2 gurus. One is the pigeon, and he recounts a story of a pigeon, a male pigeon and a female pigeon, and they were mating together, and they had little babies, and they were completely attached to the babies. And one day, while the parents flew outside the forest to get food for the baby, the hunters came and they trapped the babies in their net. And once the parents came back, they saw their babies could not be rescued, and so they gave up their life. So the Avadhut says this undue attachment to children can also be a disaster, because eventually the children will also be taken away from us. This is one example. The one that I really liked is another guru he refers to is the prostitute Pingla. And this is it's coming again from 11th canto. Pingla is a prostitute, and her job was to stand outside her door dressed up in a very seductive manner and attract all the men. So Pingla is she's classified as being a fool who is very attached to her beauty and her nature to be able to attract men towards her. So one day she was standing outside her door and men were passing and no one was paying attention to her. And she was dressed very beautifully and she was getting frustrated. And she was looking at different men that this man is dressed very well, he will come to me and pay me a lot of money. And every time she would think this way, no man stopped towards her. And eventually it turned out to be midnight and not a single person stopped. And then Pingla felt that, what have I done? And she says, quote, "Just see how greatly illusioned I am. Because I cannot control my mind, just like a fool, I desire lusty pleasure from an insignificant man." So she realizes at that time that what she was chasing on the basis of a bodily platform made her a fool. And then she says, "I am such a fool that I have given up the service of that great person who, being eternally situated within my heart, is actually most dear to me. That most dear one is the Lord of the universe." So Pingala, a prostitute, actually achieved self-realization after understanding that nobody is paying attention to her. So this kind of a fool behavior is reflecting attachment to lust, attachment to body, and attachment to the ego that I'm very beautiful, people will come to me. And then Lord Kapila says to Devahuti in 3:31-34, "One should not associate with a coarse fool who is bereft of the knowledge of self-realization and who is no more than a dancing dog in the hands of a woman." So this is attachment to ignorance, not making a conscious effort to go towards light and education. And then another example, which is one of my favorites, is a fool who is very much attached to his or her power and sense of prestige. And this is coming from Bhagavatam 7.8.10, where Prahlad Maharaj is educating his own father. And in fact, he says, "Oh, best of the demons." He doesn't say father, best of the demons. Here he says, "In former times, there were many fools like you." Imagine saying that to your father. "There were many fools like you who did not conquer the 6 enemies that steal away the wealth of the body." In all glories to Prahlad Maharaj, so courageous, a 5-year-old boy, telling his father that you're a fool. And the 6 enemies that he's referring to here are the 5 gross senses and the mind. And we know Hiranyakashipu could not control either one of them. And we know there are other examples like Kansa and also Ravana, who were all fools in their own category. And then another example of a fool who could be very attached to scholarly pursuits of academic endeavors is coming from the example of Bhagavatam 11.5.6, where the Yogendras are giving advice to King Nimi. Quote, "Ignorant of the art of work, such arrogantly proud fools, enchanted and enlivened by the sweet words of the Vedas, pose as learned authorities and offer flattering entreaties to the demigods." So we're seeing different categories of so-called fools who are attached to the body, to family, to profession, to power, to scholarly pursuits, and so forth. And one of my favorites here is where Lord Krishna himself is saying to Uddhava in 11.10.18, "It is observed within the material world that sometimes even an intelligent person is not happy. Similarly, sometimes even a great fool is happy. The concept of becoming happy through expertly performing material activities is simply a useless exhibition of false egotism." This is the Lord telling Uddhava. A lot of heavy knowledge in this particular statement. And our classic examples of a fool who was very, very attached to his position is Indra, and we know the entire pastime of Govardhan Leela. This is in 10.27.7, where Indra prays to Lord Krishna and says, "Even fools like me, who proudly think themselves universal lords, quickly give up their conceit and directly take to the path of the spiritually progressive when they see you are fearless even in the face of time." So there are some people who understand that their behavior is very foolish and they surrender to the Lord. And then there are others who consciously or subconsciously remain foolish and they do not surrender to the Lord. And one example is Shushupal and so forth. So these are some just very basic examples of people who exhibited foolish behavior, and unfortunately the outcome was not very beneficial for them. And one of my favorite stories, which shows how attachment to a child can be very detrimental mentally, is the story of King Chitraketu, coming from Bhagavatam 6.16. We all know the story. Chitraketu and his wife Kritadyuti were very desirous of a son, and everything was going well in their kingdom, but they didn't have children. So one day, the sage Angira came and he asked whether all is well in your kingdom. And he said, King Chitraketu said, everything is well except that I don't have children. And so through the blessings of the sages, a child was born to King Chitraketu. And it was told that this child would be a reason of both joy and lamentation. And at that point, because of the joy of receiving the son, King Chitraketu did not pay much heed to these words. He was just paying attention to the first part, that this child will be a reason for joy. And then we know that Kritadyuti, his wife, had several co-wives. And these co-wives became very jealous because King Chitraketu was paying all his attention to Kritadyuti because she had borne him a son. And so they decided to poison King Chitraketu's son. And it is mentioned that the son was poisoned and eventually passed away. And when Chitraketu came to know about this, he was completely in lamentation and saying, what happened to my son? Because he was so attached to the son. And at that point, Angira Muni and Narad Muni came. It's very amazing how Narad Muni arrives at every place at the right time, at the right circumstance to give us the knowledge. And here also he says, please do not be attached to your son. This is a very temporary relationship. If you want, I can give life back to your son. And so he invites the soul back, and the soul enters the son's body, and the son gets up. And the son gives the self-realization to the father. He says, oh father, I don't think you're my parents. I don't know which lifetime of mine is this. You are parents in this lifetime. I must have had millions of parents in my previous lifetimes. So who is my real father and mother? So he speaks this. And then King Chitraketu actually undergoes a whole change, and he realizes that this undue attachment to my son is very temporary. And Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, the name is Asat. Asat means temporary. Sat means eternal, Asat means temporary. So here, through the wisdom of Angira and Narad Muni, actually King Chitraketu was able to be, able to revive his self-realization here. And I was thinking, it is so very natural for those of us who have children. It is so very, very natural to be attached to the children. When a child is very small, we get attached to the little baby steps, and we get inspiration from Lord Krishna's examples, where he is walking in Mother Yashoda's courtyard, his little pink lotus feet smeared with the butter, and he's walking. And you can just visualize Mother Yashoda seeing the little baby footprints with those butter. It's just very, very sweet. So why don't we also get attracted to our children? It's a very natural phenomenon. But the point is, the attachment should be in such a way that we are able to give our children Krishna consciousness. And that attachment should be very, very solid right from the beginning. And in fact, I have several of my very close friends who have been devotees in ISKCON for almost 30, 35 years. And I hear the same complaint from most of them, almost all of them. Once the child is close to 17 or 18, and they go into the university, and the Krishna consciousness is lost. It is so shocking, and I cannot speak about this. We don't have children, so I'm not qualified to, offer my advice here, but this is something that I've been seeing, where the parents are doing the very best when the child is very young, giving them entire Krishna consciousness, the whole morning program, having them read, do everything, chanting. But the moment they step out, the influence of Maya is excessively strong, where they have to either make some kind of a, compatibility test to see which area would be the best for the child, where they can gain Krishna consciousness, or they have to adjust to an uncompromising situation. But in most cases, I normally tell them that the seed is there, and the seed has already been watered by the parents. So once the child has already chanted the holy name, Krishna is so kind, over a period of time, the children will come back to Krishna consciousness. And this is the age where family members are desirous of making a future, making an ambition. We all need to earn money to be able to survive and support ourselves. So one has to be very, very strong in understanding the distinction between attachment to family life in a very karmic way, and just focusing on children to see, okay, you get a good job, you make good money, you have a great house, that's all very materialistic. That can come over a period of time. But giving spiritual knowledge to the children, that will not incur attachment, because the parents are strong, the children are strong, so whatever the child does, the parents can understand this is their destiny. So in terms of this, I would say the anxieties are never ever going to go away. We know there's Adi Daivika, Adi Bhautika, and Adhyatmika. These miseries are going to come to us no matter what. We cannot escape them. The question is, how do we act? My Guru Maharaj says, you will know how great a person is by the way they respond to a provoking situation. And I was meditating on these words by Maharaj, and I was thinking, I personally don't respond, I always react. And reaction can be aggressive. It can be due to anger, irritation, frustration. And so I have to tap my mind and say, I do not need to react, I need to respond. And so when we act in a very foolish manner under various anxious conditions, and when we become foolish, we tend to do things which can be very disastrous for us. And over a period of time, we can realize, why did I do this? What made me do this? So if we don't react but respond and take a step back and take a breath and say, should I be doing this or should I be doing that? But the problem is, the world is in a very fast pace right now. There's no time to ponder, otherwise the time is gone. So we are in this very tight situation where anxiety and foolish behavior and sinful activities are bound to occur. But if we take shelter of the Lord and pray to the Lord to actually take us to the right path, hopefully we will get the mercy of the Lord and we will be able to negate our so-called sinful reactions and try not to become too foolish here. And I just want to end this by saying that the positive part is we all have families in Goloka Vrindavan. Krishna is our father, and all those who are in Golok, those are our masters, and we have to serve them as servants. So we already have families. Those are eternal families. The families with us currently, profession, society, whatever it is, these are temporary. So the faster we realize this, the better it would be for us, because eventually all of this is going to be taken away from us. And when we lose something, it is going to be extremely painful. So the faster we realize this very important truth, the easier it would be for us to get ourselves detached from all these elements that I just talked about. So I will end my class here. We have about 6 minutes for discussion here. I'll take it first.
Thank you. Very wonderful class as usual. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
You know, the children, when they hit 17 and they go off to college, I guess it is, and they all of a sudden they just lose all their Krishna consciousness. I remember hearing Prabhupada more than once, you know, talk about how in India, at least when he was growing up, marriages were arranged. He talked about how he was married at a very young age. Well, his wife, first wife, his wife, one and only, was younger, and that he told the age of his father got married at such and such an age, his mother got married. So that's a big thing, you know. I never heard him talk much about education for girls. I did hear him make comments that if a girl learns how to cook and this and that, you know, just some simple things, and will find their husband and she'll be fine. So what are your thoughts about that? Because it seems that that's the real thing, because, you know, Prabhupada would always repeatedly say sex desire is the binding, most powerful force in the material world, but these arranged marriages, that's a thing of the past, it seems like. It's culturally not, you know, accepted anymore. But that would seem to be, I don't know about solving the problem, but it would make a lot of, you know, progress towards solving the problem. But you know, he's just throwing the girls out there, they're past puberty, and they, you know, all of a sudden they're just out there with all these peers who are just lusty like anything. What do you expect? Anyway, what's your...
I could answer this in 3 ways. In fact, I was just having a discussion with a family member. The first way is the old tradition, which actually is still rampant in India, in the rural villages, where girls get married at maybe 14, 16, for a variety of reasons, poverty or parents just want to, get away with their responsibility, is the girls would actually mold into the in-laws' families very nicely when they're married young. And second reason is, as you said, the lusty desires start kicking in very early now, not 16, they start kicking in even at 12 or 13. And in order to curb those lusty desires, to prevent, and this goes for both male and female, not just the females, to curb that so that they don't become wayward and start, becoming promiscuous, best is to get them married. So that's the second way. And third, my personal opinion is, because we are in Kali Yuga, and the cost of living is so high, and today it is necessary that both members of a family, husband and wife, actually get a job. And so to really rely on one person's income is not going to be enough. So which means the girl has to get an education, has to get a job, and particularly now I see the trend in India is the young couples that I talk to, they don't want to have children because they're not able to support the child. And they don't want to be getting burdened by supporting children. This is very common. I've talked to some of my, not friends, acquaintances. So I would say this can be answered in multiple facets, depending on, what ideology you're coming from. Is it coming from a very orthodox rural ideology, or coming from a physiological ideology where the best way to control sex desire is to get them married. But there's no guarantee that they would meet no adultery or infidelity after marriage. There's no guarantee. Because the distractions which are being given, even in villages in India currently, because social media is everywhere, whatever, I don't want to use the negative words here, everybody has access to pornography and so forth. So there is no guarantee that a person who is married will not be attracted to another person. So I would say, moving with the times, one has to see their own personal circumstance in terms of financial, social standing and make the right decision. But regardless of that, if we keep Krishna consciousness in the center, that's a very solid foundation, whether someone's getting married at 16 or 36. If Krishna is the center, still Maya will test us no matter what, because Maya is so strong. But if our foundation and our basis is very strong, I think the family will be able to survive. Sorry about the roundabout answer, but there's no black and white answer. It's a very gray area.
Thank you for the nice class, Mataji. So, in this current verse, it is explained that how the materialistic person feel anxiety. Anxiety is the word used. And in the previous verse, it was used how the person is satisfied, or feels himself to be satisfied or perfect. So these are two opposite things. I mean, if a person is satisfied, why will he feel anxiety? Or if a person is anxiety, why will he feel satisfied? I mean, these are like confusing things. Like sometimes when I talk to people also, like especially rich people, they initially pose as if they are like very satisfied, very fine. I mean, everything is good. Like they feel themselves their perfect life. But again, you keep talking to them for some time, I mean, they'll express all their anxieties. So it's, I mean, I don't understand. I mean, is a person fully satisfied or is he anxiety? I mean, how can it be both?
I have a very simple response. I was listening to Bhrigupati Prabhu's class yesterday, because he gave verse 6, and the answer is very simple, and it's nailed it by the word illusion. Prabhu mentioned that. We are all in illusion. We think we are satisfied, but we are not. And that's why we are in anxiety. This delusion or illusion is so prominent that we may feel that I have achieved contentment, but it'll be just a period of days before something strikes us. So I view this as, going up and down, up and down, up and down. The ups are where we feel somewhat satisfied, and then Maya is going to bang us again and we go down. So when we are in our ups, we feel, okay, life is going really well. I'm happy, everything's fine. And the next moment, something will happen and we feel the anxiety is coming on. So this illusion of constant pain and pleasure will keep us bound in this world, and that's why we feel so-called contentment is actually not contentment. It's just an illusion. That's what I would answer based on what Prabhu said yesterday also. I would say the key word is illusion here. It's like a filter in front of our eyes, right? We're not able to see clearly. Somebody has to remove that filter.
Thank you very much for the class, Mataji. I think the solution is also mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, similar, when Sukdev Goswami, without any purificatory processes, he starts just leaving home and running out, and Vyasdev, Srila Vyasdev is chasing him down. Oh son, like it's mentioned, I don't remember the words, but in a very, very fatherly love, and it said that the trees, how can, even the trees could not respond. So there's a creator of Bhagavatam who is also feeling that, but then Sukdev Goswami walks as completely unillusioned by the father-son relationship which they had. So, it's very difficult to say, to do that way, but the solution is like that we work in various, say for example in companies, the designation, and we move on. And then you don't get hooked up by the prior relationships which you had with other peers. And so if the same concept can be applied on family, the journey, it's not that we have to ignore them, but the journey or the reactions coming from that becomes little easier to manage. Thank you.
Thank you for your nice comment, Prabhu.
Thank you for a wonderful class. I think an important factor all the time in even a family member or a family itself is that in Krishna consciousness we tend to speak more about that everything's going to end eventually. It's all going to be gone. So I think that when you have that kind of consciousness or you develop that kind of relationship, then your idea of becoming, great or becoming successful, those things are toned down tremendously. Even if a devotee comes into Krishna consciousness and they have a lot of ambitions and all of a sudden they associate with devotees and they hear you're not that body, they hear that everything's temporary, that regardless of how much you struggle, it's all going to end. That it tends to, you develop a different kind of mentality. You automatically kind of understand, oh, wait a minute, is this really worth it? Is it really what I want to do? And you question those things. And I think that's really, in the family of Krishna consciousness, that should always be there. But, at the same time, you have a prescribed duty. If you have children, you need to take care of them. If you have a wife, you need to take care of them. But all the time, in the back of our mind, we should understand that, hey, it's all going to end. All this struggle is just going to, it's not going to be satisfying. You're not going to be happy from it. And if we continue speaking like that, then things can be much, much more realistic in terms of association, family members, and all that.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Yes. And definitely, we cannot reject or mistreat our wife and children and reject them, because that would be indicating that we are not doing our dharma properly, according to the Varnashram system also.
So, thank you very much. I had a recollection of some exchange that I had with a policeman at the airport when we used to distribute books, and this is about teenagers. So he was Christian, obviously very, how do you say, like observer. He was, analyzing things, and he would come because he knows that we are Hare Krishna's devotees. So his first question he asked, how does your teenager respond to religion? And I told him, I said, honestly, teenagers, doesn't matter in which religion they are. So my response, this is just my personal understanding I had, is that the psychological nature of human beings, when you're a little boy, little baby, is different than when you're a teenager and when you're an older, how we respond to religion. So then I said that, Maya, the power of illusion is so strong. When you're a little boy, you just depend on the father, the mother, and everything is like playing is a game. How do you say, the adultery hasn't come yet. When you reach that age, you totally feel you're independent, that you can do it, that you can control it, you can do so many things. Your dreams are really like rocket high. But so that makes it really wild. When you get older, you get defeated. You tried all those things, didn't work out. So it appears more that religion is more appealing to older people because you don't have any other choice now. You saw you were defeated. So Maya is working in every aspect of life like that. But I have a question now. This is different, and maybe you can help, someone can help me out in this. Maybe I might be wrong in my understanding. When you mention about Pingala, or when we, in the Bhagavatam actually, not you, but it's mentioned about Pingala standing up waiting for customers, and we say the prostitute, and you immediately think prostitute, someone who, do services as sex. Mm-hmm. But then I was just thinking, wait a minute, but actually it looks like this person is not really attached to sex. This person is working out of necessity, doesn't have any other means and ways to work to make her living. Mm-hmm. If somebody will come and say, hey, we offer you a job, like, I even felt like that when I was younger and I saw some people that I knew and I was feeling like crying. I said, I wish I could have some money and means to get them out of this and change them like that. So the comment in that, it doesn't look like it's about sex. Is it about, or the...
Based on what I've read, yeah, she wanted to make her ends meet, so it was a necessity for her, as you mentioned correctly. That it was more of a necessity to, have money to be able to live properly rather than being attached to the opposite sex sensually, which was different. Mm-hmm. So I think what you have said, Prabhu, is correct.
And now just changing a little bit. So sometimes about when we mention prostitution, if a man or woman actually is looking for that, it can easily go anywhere like correct. That without asking for it. So it doesn't, yeah.
I think what you said is absolutely correct. In Pingala's case, otherwise why would she achieve self-realization so quickly?
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Haribol.